Good day, everyone. Welcome to this discussion. Naturally, the topic will be the current events that are going on in Israel, the wave of terrorist violence, and whatever response Israel is making to it. It's interesting to note, whenever these things happen, and they happen very periodically. In fact, they've been happening for 100 years. If you assess the situation from 1900 for the last 115 years, every few years, no matter what the situation is, and whatever Israel does or the Jewish people do, there are riots against Jews by Arabs in the land of Israel. It was true in 1902, it was true in 1909, it was true at the beginning of the First World War when the Ottoman Turks persecuted the Jews terribly. It was true when the British came in 1921, 1923, 1925, 1929, 1933, 1936, 1939. It was true in 1947. And then there was the official wars. The War of Independence in 48, the Sinai Campaign in 56, the Six-Day War in 67, the Yom Kippur War in 73. And the intent of the wars was always to destroy the Jewish state, to drive the Jewish people into the sea, to kill as many Jews as possible. And then when the wars didn't succeed, when Egypt made peace, when Jordan made peace, so then the Palestinian Authority, which Israel revived and brought back in its midst, Arafat resorted to intifadas. The first intifada, the second intifada, the Lebanese wars with Hezbollah, and then the Gaza wars, all of which lead to bloodshed, destruction, violence, but all of them eventually do not change the strategic position of either of the parties in any significant way. So now we're engaged again in such a cycle, which, God willing, is petering out and hopefully will peter out completely. And we hope for the best. Now the question is, what can we do about it? Well, I saw in the Washington Post over the last 2 days, the usual articles by Jews that it's all Israel's fault. The occupation is destroying Israel. They got an Israeli leftist to write such a column, even though this has nothing to do with the occupation. If there were no Israeli soldiers on the West Bank, then Abbas would send in tens of thousands to riot. It has nothing to do with the Temple Mount, because that's just a subterfuge. And then you have an article in the Washington Post from a person who says, or two people who say, well, we were confirmed Zionists all of our life, but we now support boycotting Israel. And the Post naturally revels in such articles. And that's part of what goes on, but it doesn't mean anything. Because short of, God forbid, dismantling the Jewish state and somehow taking 6.5 million Jews and putting them somewhere else, there's no way out of this. There's nowhere to go. And therefore, we could just have to continue to maintain our fortitude, defend ourselves, and wait for a change of mindset in the Palestinian world. The mindset should be live and let live. 2 states. You want a state? Good. Everybody agrees now that we're willing to let you have a state, even though whether or not really a state is a good idea is still debatable. But anyway, you can have the state. And you can have your independence. You can run your own country. We don't want to have anything to do with you. We're not going to bother you. We're not going to build any more settlements. I mean, the outlines of the peace agreement are clear to everybody. What Israel will keep, what Israel will give away, the matter of the Temple Mount, the matter of Jerusalem, everything is clear. So why is there no settlement? Why is there no agreement? Because one of the parties, basically the Palestinians and the Arabs and the Iranians and the mullahs, and because it's a religious thing, they say that no Jew is allowed to live in Muslim countries, and especially a Jewish state should exist within a area of the world that the Muslims claim that's theirs exclusively. And make no mistake, Islam is an exclusive religion. Just ask what goes on in Saudi Arabia. Try and make a church in Saudi Arabia, let alone a synagogue. So it's an exclusive religion that doesn't tolerate anyone else. So you really at an impasse. We are very, very limited in our options and what can happen here. There is no Muslim leader that is willing to stand up and say, live and let live. Let's end this once and for all. Instead, we see Abbas with all of his cunning and his falseness at the United Nations. He's going to loose a bombshell. What's the bombshell? He's not abiding by the Oslo agreements. They haven't abided by the Oslo agreements for 20 years. He's going to take us to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. That's an old, you used that up already. All of these things, they're going to make another Goldstone report. We've been through all of this. We went through the script a number of times already. So if you want to change the script, so to speak, Netanyahu keeps on shouting to change, to stop the incitement. Well, the incitement is, that's what makes Arab teenagers willing to commit suicide, because make no mistake, these are all suicide missions that they go on. To stab a Jew, they know they're going to get killed. They know that somebody's going to shoot them. So where does this fanaticism come from? And what does it accomplish? And he killed one more Jew. Does that change in any way the situation on the ground? Certainly not. But logic is out the window here. It just doesn't exist. It never has, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to be a factor now either. And because of that, therefore, we are shaken by the fact that there is terror, but we should not feel, I know how to put it, overly dejected, because this has been the situation, as I mentioned, for 115 years. And it's hardly likely, hardly likely to change now. All the do-gooders that write the articles, they write like, oh, this is a new thing. This, look at it, look what's happening. It just started. The whole history is wiped out. The whole background is wiped out. And people are not willing to say the truth that it's a religious struggle. It's not only a geopolitical struggle. It's not just about territory. It's about fundamental beliefs in Islam and the willingness somehow to accommodate those beliefs to the realities of the world and to the realities of the Middle East as it exists now. And the Western world pretends, they pretend regarding ISIS, they pretend regarding Iran, they likes to pretend, because who wants to get involved? Who wants to trouble? Who wants to, put boots on the ground in the famous, excuse me, the famous statement that is now so current. So because of that, therefore, we're whistling past the graveyard. We're convinced that somehow all of this doesn't really affect us. But the Western world is affected, very greatly affected. And the migrants into Europe is just the tip of the iceberg. Because of the 400,000 or the 800,000 or the 10 million stay, it's a different Europe. It becomes a Muslim Europe. And there will definitely be strife. You see the rise of right-wing parties today in Europe as a backlash to this. It's a very, very volatile and dangerous situation. Not easy to deal with at all. So one can easily be dejected or depressed. But again, reviewing the 115 years that have passed, we have not only come through it, but we've come through it in better strength and better shape. I think the Jewish world is in much better shape than it was 100 years ago, even when you factor in the Holocaust. It's the Jews, the presence of a Jewish state is itself so influential. And all of the boycotters and the people who, the confirmed Zionists who want to boycott the Jewish state, they are all relegated somehow to the dustbin of history. They haven't got a chance. That doesn't mean that we should just accept it. I think it's interesting that for the first time in many millennia, there's a penalty for killing a Jew. You're going to get shot. They're not going to just walk away. And that has to dawn on the minds of the Arabs, but also on the minds of the Jews, especially the Jews in the United States and in the diaspora, who are so committed to our being the nice guys and our being the liberals and our being the peace seekers and the peace lovers, that they prefer to ignore the reality of what is actually going on. And unfortunately, we live in a real world. We don't live in an imaginary world. We don't live in a world of make-believe. And undoubtedly, the things that will happen that are painful, that are difficult, that may even be embarrassing to us. But the main thing is that we will survive. And not only survive, we will prosper. And we'll continue to build and continue to be what we are supposed to be. A light unto the nations, an example to others of perseverance of tenacity, of not being willing to give in, not to evil, not to terror, not to lies, to be able to stand up for truth. And the fact that the world is a false place is regrettable, but that in no way should inhibit us from making our declarations. Now, I am perfectly aware that the state of Israel is not perfect. I'm perfectly aware that Israeli governments have made serious errors and may make more serious errors in the future. I'm perfectly aware that occupying, quote unquote, is a bad word. And I'm perfectly aware that we don't want to run the lives of 2.3 million Arabs. But we want to survive. And all the platitudes in the world will not help us survive. There are Jews that say, well, we should annex the West Bank, and add the 2.3 million Arabs to the population of the state of Israel. Well, even if the world would allow us to do that, and even if there would be an Israeli government foolish enough to do so, it would cause another series of enormous problems, because then the 2.3 million would have to have the right to vote, because otherwise Jimmy Carter's hateful statement that Israel is an apartheid state would somehow be validated. Okay, so then you would have 40 Arab members of Knesset instead of the 14 we have now. And the 14 we have now are simply a fifth column. They don't do anything for the Arab population that they represent. Their whole purpose is to delegitimize the state of Israel, for which they are representatives in the parliament and have all of the benefits. So that's also a non-starter. So the only solution is no solution. The only way out is the status quo is the way it is, to make the best of it that we can under the circumstances that exist, and hope that somehow there'll be a change in the mindset of the Arab world, or certainly of the Palestinian world. And the change in that mindset will allow for a reasonable settlement to occur, one which undoubtedly will be very favorable to the Arabs. Every plan that's ever been advanced has always been very favorable to the Arabs. And every time they say no, Abba Eben's famous quip that they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Tragically, that's true. So if and when such a situation does arise, so then we'll try and make the best of it. But until the time that it does arise, we really have no choice but to stand firm and to ignore all the blandishments and criticisms of our friends and lifelong Zionists, of the boycotters, of the leftists, of the anti-Semites, of the haters. We just have to continue to pursue our goal and our dream, which is coming true and will be fulfilled in its entirety, hopefully, speedily, and in our time. So that's enough genius for you for today. David, there are questions?
Yes. First question is, does the Rav feel it is safe for Americans to visit Israel now?
Is it safe for Americans to walk the streets of Chicago or New York? Just today, I heard there were 7 shootings yesterday in New York, in every borough. The night in Chicago that doesn't have 5, 6 murders doesn't occur. It's safe. Yes, it's safe. Can I guarantee that no incident will occur? There's no place in the world where you can guarantee that. So, but overall, the general, it's 100% safe. And not only safe, it's enjoyable. So I just think that the lack of perspective is shown. I mean, I'm here in America, so I feel it. The lack of perspective shown here in the United States, in the non-Jewish community and in the Jewish community, is most disturbing to me. You know, so we're afraid that something will happen. I don't think people should be afraid. David?
What do you think could facilitate a change in mindset amongst the Palestinians if the core issue is a religious issue?
Religious leaders, see, the Quran is flexible. The Quran has nice things to say about the Jews also. It has hateful things to say. So you can pick and choose. If there would be religious leaders that would pick to say the nice things and would say, live and let live. I mean, look, the Catholic Church changed. It took a long time, but it changed. So the Muslims can also change. The Catholic Church didn't give up on Christianity. Change, and that's what has to happen here too.
So it has to happen within their community. It can't be.
I don't think it will be forced upon them. They have to come to their own realization. I mean, eventually they themselves. I mean, if you speak, I don't know how to put this. When I speak to the Arab working for the sanitation department of the city of Jerusalem, and I speak to him often, I meet him on the street. He does not want to be violent, and he appreciates the fact that he has a job and he's able to support his family. He's a human being. He's not interested in all of this. And you'll see that most of the recruits and the trouble are from teenagers, from the young people who have no responsibilities. And we all know that when we're very young, we live in a fantasy world. And they're the ones most influenced, they're the ones most affected by this religious fanaticism. Listen, you're never as pious as when you're 16 years old, if you're pious. And that's what we face.
In the conversation series with Rabbi Alan Schwartz, Rabbi Wein mentioned that the Satmar Rav wrote to the Stipler Rav about fighting the state of Israel. Can you tell us what the Stipler's response was?
The Stipler was a man of few words. So he did not have you have to understand, though, that, for instance, the Chazon Ish, who was the Stipler's brother-in-law, also misjudged the state of Israel. He said the state of Israel would not last more than 15 years. He said 50 years at the most. Well, that didn't happen. There was a misjudgment as to what the state of Israel is and what it's going to be. I think the problem was that they took the Zionist movement with all of its personalities and defects and problems and said that's the state of Israel. The state of Israel is not the Zionist movement. The state of Israel is a different thing completely. And I think it's It's regrettable that there are large numbers of Jews who don't view the state of Israel as being a positive force in Jewish life, not just in terms of defense, in Jewish life generally. But we'll see what will happen. I think the situation is improving slowly. It requires us a great deal of patience. It's a long haul here. It is not, not instantaneous.
What is Rabbi Wine's opinion on the Iran deal?
I'm not privy to everything. I mean, on the surface, it looks like a very bad deal. No one said it was a good deal. Even Obama, the only thing Obama said was, well, it's the best, it's better than nothing. But there are no other alternatives. But no one ever said it was a good deal. Who knows? We'll see if even the bad deal can be enforced. If it's just not a scrap of paper that has no worth to it. But make no mistake about it, Iran is a very dangerous renegade player in this situation.
What issues do you see with the chinuch system today, and how would you fix it?
How would I fix it? Start all over again. Well, education is always a difficult thing. There's no perfect system. But I don't think you can have an educational system that's one size fits all. And you need an educational system that's really based on the students and not on the teachers. It has to meet the needs of the current society and not a fantasy society imagined as it once existed. And it has to be done on an individual basis, school by school, and I don't think there's a general fix. Yeah, they need the best people that we can get, the most compassionate teachers that we can get. We have to realize that school is much more than just knowledge, or a Jewish school at least is much more than just knowledge itself. And we'll see what happens.
That's it for the questions we have here, unless any questions came to you this week.
That's good enough for me, and I thank everyone for watching, and that we'll hear good news from each other and from Israel and from the world generally. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next month again, God willing. Kol Tuv Sela.